the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Katie Schnack. Katie, welcome to the Florida Writer Podcast.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Can you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Katie Schnack. I live in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm a writer. I write creative nonfiction. I recently published a book called The Gap Decade: When You're Technically an Adult, but You Really Don't Feel Like It Yet, which is a quirky, funny, but raw and honest kind of chronicle about being in your 20s and 30s. I also love to write creative nonfiction essays and have been published a few places there. Beyond that, I am actually a book publicist at Smith Publicity for my day job as well, which I also really love help promoting other authors too.
Well, Katie, I've been told that giving birth to a book is the easy part. It's raising it for the next 18 years that's difficult. Does being a publicist, boy, that's going to be a one for me to say, right? Does being a publicist give you a leg up? What's it like to be a publicist?
You know, it's actually been a really interesting, it's been really interesting to be on the other end of the PR side of things. I actually, at my publisher, have a team of publicists and they've been so wonderful. But what it's done being on this end of the things with releasing a book traditionally is it's given me more empathy for my clients. Because like, I know now, like for us, we would always be like, oh, pub date's coming. Like, you know, like it's just another day. But like, then my own pub date comes and I'm like sitting there like, feeling all the feelings and all the emotions. And like, you know, it's a very strange feeling. So I think that it's been really wonderful to be on the end of actual author instead of just promoting authors. I think it's going to, in the long run, help with my PR career as well. But yeah, I mean, I love, as a publicist for authors, I just love helping other people share their stories and helping them share their messages, especially when it's a positive one. And even if they're writing fiction and writing novels, I just love helping them. You know, all of those novels is like a dream and it's like someone's like passion project and it's something that's so important to them. So I feel honored to be able to kind of help them spread the word about that. But at my heart, I am a writer first and foremost too. And so just to be able to release my own book into the world is just, I'm so grateful and I feel so blessed and just happy to be on this end as well.
I understand your book is a bit of a memoir. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a memoir. It's definitely not a how-to book or a self-help book or anything like that, but it does, you know, I try to talk about things that everybody goes through in that era of 20s and 30s or any kind of season of transition and waiting. So I share the stories of me and my husband. We moved from like 5 different states and I say 1 million apartments in our 20s and our 30s, and just all the kind of hard lessons that come with that season of life for everybody, no matter, you know, if you never leave your hometown or if you move across the world. It's just a lot of transition and a lot of change and a lot of trying to acquire things and get your feet on the ground and learn what it really means to be an adult. So it just kind of really unpacks that very honestly, but then it's also really weird and funny too, because that's just who I am as a person. So
was your husband on board with this story?
He was, yeah. It's so funny because I was like, he's awesome and he's really been so supportive of everything creatively. He's an actor, so we both kind of have that same like understanding of being creative and putting things out into the world and being vulnerable in that way. And so he's so supportive of that. But I would be like, hey, like I'm turning it into my publisher. Like, do you want to read it? Because it's all about you. And he's like, nah, I'm good. I trust you. And I was like, okay. And so he did. So, but he just trusted me. But I don't think I said anything too scathing against him in there. So.
You have a blog as well, and you blog about your life. How is blogging different than putting things in a book? And I'm asking this personally because I have a memoir blog and I want to put my stories into a book. So I'm curious how you've actually done it.
Alison, let's do it. Let's get that book done. Let's get it out there. I mean, honestly, like blogging hasn't been, I have put a lot of essays up there and I have put a lot of things up there in the past, but it's definitely kind of, especially as you get into the book creation process, kind of gone, you know, to the second tier of where my emphasis goes. I think that what's been the most interesting thing, because before I wrote The Gap Decade, I had a bunch of different essays about important times in my life or important people that I met, and I got them published in various places. But when you put a whole book together, it has to have that like overarching theme. And it's interesting that you have to like really think through what that is. And then one day, and usually for me, it's like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, that's the theme. Like I get it. Like, you know what I mean? It just kind of like comes to me. So for me, like what I did, I knew that I wanted to write about this season of life because so many people walk through their 20s and 30s and it's just a struggle, like I say. And I wanted to kind of just reflect on that, because so often when people move past it, then they're like moving on to the next thing, or they're raising their families or whatever. But then there's still this, season of 10 years or so where people are struggling. And so I wanted to just address it. But anyway, so once I kind of like identified for me what my key topics wanted to be that I wanted to write about, I kind of saw like, what is the overarching theme of all of it. And for me, I really found that so many things and stories that I wanted to write about would be about waiting, would be about wanting to be 10 steps ahead of where we were, but we weren't able to get there as fast as we would like. And just kind of that like putting your nose to the grind and trying to really work through so many difficult things in careers and relationships and friendships after college. And so once I kind of like identified that and identified like the main stories I wanted to touch on, then I kind of figured out how that flowed in terms of like a narrative. And then hopefully it works. But that's what I kind of had. So it's cool to kind of like, you have like individual stories or like blogs, right? But then you have to like really think big picture. And it's challenging, and it does like challenge you as a writer. But for me, I just love the mind game of it, and I love kind of just like thinking and piecing it all together. So yeah, that's it.
Are the chapters different than the blogs? Like, is it a different style? Have you adopted or adapted to a different way of presenting yourself on paper?
That's actually a really great question. Yes, because when you're writing a blog or you're writing an essay to get published online, it's a lot shorter is what it basically comes down to. And when you have to put it into a book, you just have to expand on it so much. But it still has to kind of read with that same pace and that same like intrigue. So yeah, for me, it was a challenge because some of the chapters in the Gap Decade were actually pieces that I had published online at Hello Giggles or Romper, and I think Scary Mommy. But when I had them, I like kind of like I had to completely rewrite them. But then they still weren't long enough, right? And so what that does is it really challenged me as a writer to see like where I could add things and stretch things and kind of expand on things without it just being like dumping in a bunch of really boring descriptors or something like that. So going from like blog to creative nonfiction memoir essays, it's got to stretch, it's got to expand, but it's got to do it in a way where you're not just trying to fill up the paper, but still keep your readers interested. So you still have to be really judicious about what is an interesting detail and what's just you trying to get to your word count that you need to hit. So
I'm a very tight writer, so I write very short. And with my blogs, my goal is my life in 500 words or less. That's what I usually put out there. And it's so challenging. And I do ghost blogging for other people. So then those are more business focused. Right. And those too are difficult because I'm used to sharing my stories. I love to start in the middle of action. I love to start in the middle of a conversation. And then I'm trying to adjust to the audience. And I am, this is the part I'm going to struggle the most with, is expanding and stretching those chapters out. Did you have help? Any coaches, any writers groups, anybody that helped you identify ways you could do that?
I didn't for this phase. Very, very early on when I was starting to craft my book proposal to pitch to agents, I did have a wonderful writers group out of Memphis, Tennessee that I ran, and we were really tight for 2 years. We met weekly, and they really helped me kind of figure out that overarching narrative, like we discussed, like how I, wanted to all flow together. But when I got down to the nitty gritty and I signed the book contract, it's so bizarre to think about now, but it was literally March 2020. which is right before the world exploded, and my kids were out of school and we were all home and I was still working and all this thing. So it was just me and 15 minutes of stolen time trying to like, fit my art and my creativity in. And so I didn't have any coaches or anything like that. But I think that a lot of it too, like, and even too, like if you don't have the luxury of like hiring someone or working with someone to kind of help you get it out, I think there's so many wonderful books, right? Like I just like think so often earlier in my career, like reading the Anne Lamont's Writing on Writing or Stephen King's book about writing, all these wonderful books about people that can kind of guide you in your craft in that way are just so invaluable, and free at the library. So I didn't have a coach. I had books that I read a while ago, and I just, yeah, that was it. So.
Well, Katie, could you give us 3 tips that writers should do to publicize their own books?
Oh man, it's a great question. And again, I think it's been so interesting to be on the other side of things because it's like, even though I've literally had a 10-year career promoting other people's books, when it comes to your own, you're like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to do that. But first and foremost, I think number one, so I do a lot of like consults with writers, and the number one thing we always go over first is their website, just to make sure that everything they have up there is showing themselves and their book in the best light possible. So like making sure their bio is like really, not tooting your own horn, but like really putting out there, like, this is who I am, this is where I've been, this is where I've written things, I'm awesome. Making sure your book is just featured so prominently on the homepage, that you have links to purchase everywhere, just making sure that, because the first thing people do is they're going to Google you, right? And they're going to see the website. So just making sure that your website's in a good spot. And then beyond that, we always go over social media. Like you need to have a really good social media presence. Instagram is so wonderful for book promotion. Facebook is good just to kind of have like a baseline. It's almost serves as a website itself. And then if you're really crazy, TikTok has been so awesome for people lately. In terms of book PR, I haven't delved into the TikTok universe yet personally, but I know that I've had so many clients get really great placements with book talkers is what we call them.
Book talkers, that's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. And if you look at the hashtag book talk, it's book TOK. You can see what that is and how authors are really promoting themselves there. And it can be a really wonderful tool. And I should probably put myself on there, but I'm not there yet. So just making sure your website's a good spot, obviously being on social media, making sure that's a good spot. And then also too, I think that just being realistic about what you want to get and where you want to get things to is so helpful, because so many clients are like, of course we all want to be in the New York Times and want to be on the Today Show, and people still ask us in PR about being on Oprah, and we're like, Oprah's show ended a very long time ago. Like Oprah doesn't really, I mean, yeah, there's Super Soul Sunday, but I think being realistic about taking any opportunity and all opportunities is so helpful. I have a really fun story about a client actually recently who got on this kind of lower podcast, like someone, he was a younger podcaster and he was really up and coming. And he did a great interview. He did awesome. And then, my client did it, and it's really good to go over your message and kind of talk through all of your talking points and things like that. But then the next episode, this podcaster had on Gayle King from CBS This Morning. And he was literally like, this podcaster was awesome. And he was literally like, make sure you check out my last episode, blah, 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 and talking all about my client's book right in front of Gayle King. And so I was like, basically, I just got you on CBS This Morning. But the point is, like, taking every opportunity, especially when you're first starting out, is so important, because not only does it help you kind of get your feet wet in terms of PR and promoting yourself and talking through your message, but you just never know what it'll turn into. So I was like, website, social media, and then just really taking on anything and as much as you can. It's really all you can do.
Well, Katie, how can people get in touch with you?
Please follow me on social media. So my handle is just my name, Katie, Katie Schnack. Schnack is my last name. I also have a website, Katie Schnack, where you can sign up to get newsletters that I very infrequently send, but I do sometimes. And just, follow me on social, say hi. I love to connect with readers and other writers too. That's why I'm so happy to be here on the Florida Writers Podcast. I love talking shop, Allison. So,
Well, everyone who knows me knows I could talk about writing 24/7, drive
yes.
my husband absolutely bananas. My kids will run from the room screaming,
Yes.
but that's me. I love to talk about the craft of writing, and we are so glad to have you here. But Katie, are you ready to switch to the rapid fire questions?
I'm so ready, Allison. Let's do this.
Have you ever run out of gas?
Oh my gosh, the fact that you asked me that is so serendipitous. Am I saying that word right? I run out of gas all the time. Like, it's so bad. Well, actually, I've never been like on the side of the road, but I've been on E with a 0. And you know what? As a mom, unfortunately, it happens even more now because I'm so like exhausted and spread thin. So I'll be just driving my children, trying to be a super mom. And then I'm like, yep. And I've been on empty for like the last 5 minutes. So, but luckily, I've always made it to a gas station.
Well, the only time I ever ran out of gas, I was living on a military base. We were on the base. I ran out of gas. A couple of Marines stopped by, filled me up, and I was on my way. I did discover, however, that there was a dent in my gas tank. And so my needle never left below halfway. That's what I learned. So if I got to half, I had to fill it up.
Oh my gosh, that's such a crazy story. I love that. I love the image of these Marines coming to save the day. So
that's right. Well, that's the benefit of living on a Marine base.
Exactly.
All right. I know you're a Florida girl. So ocean or Gulf?
Oh my gosh, 100% ocean. Gulf schmolf. Like, I do golf sometimes with my husband. Oh, we actually live by a golf course and we do like to frequent the restaurant. So that's the extent of my golfing, is we take our kids to the golf course restaurant. So.
And our final question, what is your favorite time of year?
Oh man, I mean, is it if I'm living in Florida or if I'm living up north? My favorite, actually, it's kind of both for if I'm up north, because I'm from Minnesota originally. But even in Florida, I think October is just the best month. It's just fun, and like the holidays are coming right up. The weather in Florida is awesome in October, but the weather up north is also awesome. So I'm going to say fall.
Fantastic. Well, Katie Schnack, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Allison out. Boom. We're all done.
Thank you so much. I loved it. That was fun. It's fun to kind of talk more like writing stuff than just like book promotion too all the time. So awesome. Thank you.
Katie Schnack is an author and book publicist who writes because she loves making people laugh and feel less alone. Books and writers have changed her life for the better. She's a mom and a wife and lives in West Palm Beach, Florida. And she loves it because winter is ... sad. Follow along with her at katieschnack.com. KatieSchnack.com. For more information on the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org.